As always with our sponsored content, we have a code to give away of this one. And today we're going to be looking at Blazing Strike, a new fighting game to hit the Nintendo Switch.
Indeed, we're going to go over all of the mechanics, the different gameplay modes. We'll also talk about things like online performance, because those are very important, frame rates, and generally how it is on the Nintendo Switch version.
So thank you to the publishing team for sponsoring this video. What exactly is Blazing Strike? Well, let's find out. Let's start by looking at the story then, because there is a full story mode included. The story's quite grandiose actually, a lot more than I was expecting. It starts by the world being ravaged by climate change, and then grows past this problem with the people of Earth looking for a way out of this problem that they've created for themselves, when they see a hand, the hand extended of their creator, and feeling as if this is the solution, the hand is the extended hand of friendship. They fly towards it in a rocket, only to be destroyed.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Ultimately, someone on Earth reveals himself to be supernatural and seals away the creator to protect the Earth, and it's then hypothesized that there must be other supernatural people living on Earth. Now it cuts to a few years later where the Earth is beginning to heal itself, but a new regime has grown into power. A totalitarian government is obviously lurking, and the resistance of people are looking to fight back, and you join the resistance, and that's where the story starts.
It's made me want to fight Az. So how about the gameplay then?
Well, in terms of gameplay, obviously it is a traditional side-on 2D fighting game, very much inspired by the fighting games of the 90s, the arcade games of the 90s. There are definitely a few influences in here. Most prominently, I would say the Street Fighter, obviously Capcom Street Fighter series, but more so SNK's fighting games, King of Fighters, Fatal Fury, Mark of the Wolves, that sort of thing. They all have their DNA in here, I would say. I also got a bit of a Guilty Gear influence, both in terms of some of the character designs, but also that story of like a end of days, dystopian future. So definitely a nice mix of those classics in here.
Yeah, creator Mark Chung basically said that he wanted to create a fighting game that didn't necessarily just appeal to fighting game fans. He wanted to make it very accessible.
Yeah, and mentioning Mark Chung there, the game is pretty much a one-man band. It's a very small team, but Mark Chung himself is credited by doing a vast majority of the work, and when you take that into consideration, it's a massive achievement. Fair play, because the game feels incredibly polished. It has those lovely big chunky rendered sprites that you would see in the arcade back in the day. It's a very vibrant and colourful game, and the most important part, the fighting itself, feels very polished. So just looking at the fighting itself for a moment, it's a 4-button fighter, so you have a light and heavy punch and a light and heavy kick. You do have special moves that you can perform. Again, these feel like a combination of your kind of quarter and half circles of your Street Fighters to your more back forwards, whatever button, down button that you got more in things like Mortal Kombat. Now, I mentioned some of the SNK games earlier, and a lot of the earlier games in those series were team-based fighting games. This isn't the case here. This is a single fighter on screen at any one time. There are no tag team elements, anything like that. I think that ties into what you said about trying to keep it quite accessible. But you do have a rush mechanic to the game, which is basically like a bit like the run system that they introduced in Mortal Kombat 3, where you have a stamina bar at the top which you can use by holding down R, where you can rush into your enemies or rush away from them, which is different because I don't think you could run backwards in MK3, and you can then kind of run into combos.
Okay.
And this will lead to you obviously doing some quite devastating attacks, but you can also activate the rush mode properly by holding the L and R together, which will put you into rush mode, giving you more attack and defense options, but this does drain over time.
So as far as special moves go, I did notice below your health bar you've got these 3 things that are gradually building up and then they're flashing, I guess, when they're available. How does that system work?
Actually, that only applies to one character, which was quite interesting. There's a character called Pink who has a huge weapon like a sword, and she has a limited number of like specials. They're almost like bomb attacks that you activate or you use by doing a special move. I'm not 100% sure, I couldn't find a definitive answer, but it feels like because she has a melee weapon, they've kind of reduced how many times she can perform certain moves to keep her balanced.
Okay.
But generally, your special moves are performed as you would expect, with particular button prompts and presses. And you have a mix here of projectiles or kind of like flaming fists. Each character is quite different in that respect, and you'll get used to each character and whether you prefer the more ranged attacks or the get in and do some serious damage of the heavier characters as you play.
For more advanced players, I did notice you enjoying the training segment, which gives you access to things like hitboxes.
Yeah, you can play this just with a dummy character and just, do whatever you want, but you can turn on things like hitboxes, command prompts at the bottom of the screen, damage percentages, that sort of thing, if you really want to try and get a feel for exactly what you're doing and improve your play through that.
You're looking at around 14 different playable characters and 2 hidden ones?
Yeah, so as you say, 14 characters, quite an ensemble cast actually. Generally, whilst everyone will have their favourites, you have your Ryu type or your Terry Bogard, that sort of character. Here, I didn't feel that any one character stood out, but I didn't feel that there were any throwaway characters either. It was quite a nice, balanced cast.
Aside from that, they're also releasing further characters as free DLC later on. Watching you play this, there was one guy with basically a tiger as a hat, wasn't there? I liked him, he looked quality.
Yeah, a big, beefy character, a bit like Zangief from Street Fighter, and everything he does is kind of close range, and that's what's quite good because you could use that rush move obviously to attack him, but that does mean getting quite close to him, but you could also use it to dash away from him if you're getting, if you're in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, the cast, although obviously they don't have actual recognisable characters, there are some that look familiar. There's one that looks very much like The Last Airbender, isn't there?
Yeah, there were definitely a couple that I would say inspiration's been taken from popular culture, and even if they don't look like a particular character, they play like characters you may have played with before in other games, and it gives it that sense of familiarity, and obviously it's paying homage to a great era of gaming, which was the 90s arcade time.
For a lot of people, the big thing is going to be the online play, what systems it uses and how that performs. So what would you say about that?
So you have casual matches that you can obviously try and link up with someone from around the world, and there's a lobby mode also. It uses rollback netcode, which is thankfully becoming kind of standard these days for online in fighting games, and again all the more impressive when you consider such a small team to implement that, because it does reduce the amount of lag that you may otherwise experience whilst playing people from around the globe. So we mentioned training mode just now, and we'll give mention to a few of the other game modes. You have the story mode itself, which plays a bit like the most recent Samurai Showdown game in terms of how its story is implemented. So there are a lot of text sections, interaction between characters, and then you'll play as a character generally for just one round, and obviously that victory will then advance the story and you'll learn a bit more about what's going on. And as I mentioned, the story is actually quite big, a lot bigger than I expected. It's not just a case of let's have a tournament, but aside from that, you also have an arcade mode. Plays quite traditionally as you would expect. You pick your character and then you're given a random opponent all the way through till the final character that you have to fight. Doesn't do the kind of ladder thing of fighting your way up. It just takes you back to the character select screen each time you win.
And if you died, you have infinite continues and things like that?
I'm going to be honest, I didn't die. So I'm assuming you would. I would be very surprised if you didn't. Yeah. But no, generally that's the case, isn't it, in these games?
On to the visuals and performance then. This one runs, as you'd hope, at 60 frames per second. I didn't notice any lag, latency or drops in frame rate, and the frame pacing looks very consistent, which is what you'd like. And there are a few different visual options, aren't there?
There are. So for the vast majority of this footage, you'll see it running in its arcade mode, which just keeps that hint of pixelation about it, smooths out some of the edges. You also have a HD mode, which does look lovely. It looks really nice, bright and colourful, but I did prefer the arcade mode personally. You also have things like CRT filters as well if you want to give that a try. I'll try to show a bit of each of those within this video to give you a taste of it all, but as I said, I did prefer the arcade mode, so most of what you're seeing is that mode.
It is a very colourful game, really vibrant palette. As soon as I saw you playing this, I mentioned that. It just pops out of the screen. Looks great, doesn't it?
It does, and the backgrounds are another highlight for me. It, again, just evokes memories of Street Fighter, Fatal Fury, games like that, where you've got the kind of bystanders watching as you fight, and limited animations on them, but enough to make the world feel lived in as you fight in front of them.
Have you got any critiques of it?
I say this in an ideal world where this isn't such a small team, but it perhaps would have been nice to see some of the story segments fleshed out a bit more and not be quite so text heavy. But owing to the fact it's such a small team, the fact they put this much into the game already is impressive. Onto the audio then, and you have your kind of fast-paced themes as you would expect, but there were a few of the themes that were quite melancholic, almost quite somber, which does make sense in terms of the story that's being told, but did surprise me at the same time when you're fighting. It also uses limited sound bites in terms of speech, again, as you would expect, kind of a staple of the genre. What is quite interesting is that at times it's obviously nice and clear and recorded as you would expect to the standards of today, but there are a few times, like when you finish arcade and you get your congratulations, where it does the heavily synthesized, like old school speech that you'd expect in an early 90s fighter. I thought that was quite a nice touch as well.
Yeah, sometimes it's nice, isn't it, when they do things a little differently than what you expect. It makes it stand out.
It does, it's just a nice little, again, little nod, little throwback to the games that inspired it.
So Blazing Strike then, it retails at £34.99. However, Numbskull Games are also offering a limited edition of Blazing Strike, a physical, which includes a full 112-page colour art book, a CD soundtrack, and a set of collectible character cards featuring the roster of fighters. Decent.
There's also a standard physical release planned, so a few options in terms of how you can pick this one up. So that's it. Hopefully that's given you a good idea as to what Blazing Strike is, how it plays, and games that inspired it. If you do have any questions though, do let us know in the comment section below.
Let us know your favourite fighter, that's how we're going to decide who wins this free game. And as always, just a big thanks to all of you that enjoy the content, and to anyone that decides to sponsor SwitchUp. Nice one.
There'll be links down below if you are interested in this one. Thanks again to the publishing team for sponsoring this episode, and thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.